inside here.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Okay, so that being said,
Can I drop this?
K&Ms are they're not the same as, I mean, yeah, they all have 4 wheels and brakes and they look similar, but they do a lot of different things that I swear are easy engineering feats that other companies just bypass. This machine is very smart. That's a bad thing, it's smart. But it's smart with no problems. This hood is tricky. You just gotta see this stuff right here. This will come off. It's static stuff from being around. Underneath the hood here, we have we have some cool stuff. Generally under here, you're probably gonna never have to look. Here's the winch contactor for the winch. Okay. I mean, that's something you're probably never gonna have to worry about, I hope.
It's out though.
In here is a fuse panel. Everything on these new stuff is fused or relayed. And I mean everything. No matter what you plug into, what you do, it's got fuses and relays. So the cool thing about this is they put the sticker on upside down to mess with your head. So when you pick it over here this way, you're like, oh yeah, that's great. So you gotta sit there and stare at it like this. But it'll tell you where your heat. This don't have a heater. Okay. This is your DC accessory. This would be like your winch accessories and stuff like that. Tail lamps, headlamps, accessory for the ECU, key switch power. There's spares in there. Okay. Hope you never have to play in here. Now, one place that you might have to play, this is the hidden mess with your head. And I'm going to tell you, if you go to an auto parts store and grab a couple of these, just to have them hanging around. Someday you might need one. Okay. And you're going to go, what the hell do I need to get one of them next? It's uncommon for us. Right in here and in here, since this has power steering, this has a DPS fuse, and it's a 40 amp. 40 amp. Yeah, like okay. You go and hey, he's in 40 amp. They're like, yeah, we'll get you a couple. Because normally nothing really goes over 30. Yeah, it's the only weird oddity. But this one here will be for your power steering. I don't think you ever have to deal with that one. But this one here is our accessory plug. Okay. Which I'll explain in a minute. Because this thing has a separate live wire power bar. You don't just go plugging things in the batteries on these things anymore. There's distribution spots. So if you put a light bar on it, I'll show you where to get to the light bar. Like when I put the winch in it, I put it on the accessory. So if the winch ever did something weird, it'll pop that for the accessory fuse. Okay. But they're the only two that are odd. Everything else is common. Okay. But you can get them the upwards. This pigtail here is for diagnostics. Don't plug anything in. Okay. Brake cylinder reservoirs for your brake fluid. Okay. Here is a winch outlet that you plug the old. It goes there. The old cord. Okay. Thing. Okay. And of course, you got a rocker switch on the dash. So I'll show you. Now these hoods, everybody just gets crazy with you. Just kind of push it down. Push it back like that.
Same way you pull it out though.
Yep. I usually just do like this with my fingers. Yep. It'll walk up, go down, push it back. Boom, bang, bang. So.
Let me ask you a question. The ones that are camo, is this all that's camo, this front?
Uh-huh. Wait, maybe the bed panels too. Okay. I think the sides of the bed are camo too, but I think they're black, and I think, yeah. What you pay for all that stuff is insane. They're both companies are ignorant about. Players is even way more.
Well, it's Realtree. I bet that's just a pass-through to Realtree.
For Can-Am, yes, but Polaris see, this is where Polaris puts the screws to you. It's Polaris Pursuit camo. That's their own camo. So they bang on.
They put it in their pocket.
Yeah, they put theirs in their pocket. Front A-arms are greasable, uppers and lowers. A couple greases here and there, nothing fancy. You're used to all that. Fuel cell is right here. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to look at me real strange like. You put fuel in this thing, you just put regular old 87 crappy gas in it. You're not the gas pump. Don't run 89, don't run 91, don't run 93. Okay. Everything was built to run on E10, 87.
Okay, perfect.
It will not hurt them.
That's what I do now.
Bed lift back here. Okay. Now, granted, for us bigger guys, we aren't going to fit in here. Yeah. So,
the pin comes out.
Yeah, I pull the pin, and it'll give us
a little bit of room
in here. Now, down here, you just pop the cap. Cartridge filter slides out. Stuff. It's a huge cartridge filter.
Okay.
Does have a drain in it too for thick sediment.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people will go looking like on your machine you have an overflow bottle and make radiator fill. This is all one right here. GM Dextrol, the ozone friendly, stuff you can drink. Will just give you a little heartburn. So you don't need, if you need a little bit of coolant, you don't need to buy like this. You buy a little K&M ball. It's 14, 15, 16 bucks a quart nowadays. So you don't need all that fancy stuff. Now, one cool thing about this 700 motor, there's your oil filter. There's a cartridge.
Oh, okay.
Slide it out, put a new one in. You fill, and that's your oil fill and dipstick.
Okay.
And on the bottom's a drain plug. Now, I am going to tell you.
How the hell do you get to the drain plug?
Like everything else under the middle. Okay. There's a hole down there. It's got a 17 millimeter plug. And this rascal holds 2.5 quarts of 0.40 or 0.50 synthetic. We always have it here. You can get it in the kit. Okay. This is coil over spark plug cap. So there's no wires, the coil in the cap. So if you ever want to change a plug, you just undo that, unplug that, boom, bang, go in there. Differential's really simple on these guys. It's just got a 75 140 synthetic gear oil. 100 hours that gets changed.
Okay.
Both front rear 100 hours. No, 100 miles, 100 hours. 100 hours. And other than that, anything else under here, we don't need to worry. Vents, all your
everything's
front differential transmission, all your vents are up here, up making a U-turn up high. Okay. That motorcycle one in there, but it ain't gonna hurt anything. Yeah, it's just venting for your, so they're not down. I mean, it used to be they were down here.
Yeah.
Yep. That turned out to be a bad idea. Rear suspension is another cool thing. Everything on it is greasable as well. You'll have grease fitting on the sway bar and the upper arms.
Oh, wow.
And that's all you're going to find on these guys. Anything at the air and pivot points and sway bar are going to have grease fitting. So you have 10 at the back, 8 in the front. Okay. Pretty simple. Nice big tailgate latch. Works really well. It's actually, it comes off with a truck tailgate too. This side over here, if you get into deep water, it's got a drain plug right here to drain the water out of your clutch cover.
Oh, wow.
So if you get, and this is where you have to get water to get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They all do that for a good reason in a way. Tire pressures are right in the back of the bed on this gizmo. Very confusing because it lists every dang thing they offer. So it shows right here, occupants, 3, no doors. I tell you, this is what I do with it.
What do you keep them at?
18 all the way around.
Okay.
I don't understand why they dropped the 4 in the front. Makes no sense. We've been running 18 all the way around it for years. They get their own new tires last year and they're heavier ply. It's like, why are we dropping these down? That makes no sense. Up here in the glove box, got the winch remote toolkit. Cool thing about this is it does come out.
Oh, wow.
Set that and lose that somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, set that and lose that somewhere. These two seats here lift up because they make storage containers that go under here, which are actually really cool.
You want to get one?
They actually make one. This one don't lift up because it's pivots. Then you got your coffee holder. If you're out solo or 2 in it, you can drink your coffee. It's a soda or coffee holder, not a beer holder.
That's right.
First thing everybody, I put my beer in there, but you mean your soda? Yeah, my soda. I'm with you. Couple things you will like about this. I think it's going to be a lot different than what you had. It's not as bucky. It's a little stiff. It's new. The suspension is a little. Get a little time on. It's going to ride smoother. It's a little buckier than your old one because it's new. As far as suspension, but it will work nice. You will have 2 keys, main key, spare key, whatever. Okay. Key position. Now this has an on. You'll see it powers up, and of course you start. Now these will only start in park or neutral. Now your old one, which this still applies, this will save your high range, put your foot on the brake.
Oh,
Your foot's got to be on the brake.
wow. But not on the brake to start at the marker neutral.
No, not on the brake. Now this is where it gets a little violent. I'm gonna show you something. Maybe. Let me stick out the side grab screwdriver. If you decide to put a light bar or something on here, you don't put things directly to batteries anymore.
Okay.
Because of drawing juice. And the next thing you know, you're in here going, Justin, it just kills batteries. I'm like, no, wait a minute. So if you take a little screwdriver, pull this out. You don't want me to do this because these are power distribution posts.
Okay.
Right here. So if you do a light bar or something, you just bring your wires down into here. Boom, instead of wiring all the way back, which I'll show you where the battery's at. Yeah. This is a strange contraption. You kind of got to pull the bottom one first and push the top in. If you try putting the top and then the bottom, it'll fall off every time you touch it. 12-volt outlet. It goes off with the key. Now, this will have interesting stuff. You are used to having a Polaris that has a push button on the fly 4-wheel drive.
Right.
This is different, but it's way less moving parts. So I like about these things. There's about 50 less moving parts in this 4-wheel drive system. There's no magnets, no rollers, no hilliards, not a whole bunch of extra bearings and shims. And this just has a drive shaft going to a front pumpkin. And right now, when it's in 2-wheel drive, it's just spinning that front. Ain't doing nothing, just hanging out in limbo. Now, when you kick this up, oops, I'm sorry. When you kick this up to 4-wheel drive, you hear the 4-wheel drive actuator lights it up in the gauge. Now that's going to put you in.
Now you want to be in. You want to be parked.
I'll give you an insight. I'll give you a tip. Yeah. No, you don't have to be parked. So right now we're just in 4-wheel. We're in a limited slip 4-wheel like an automobile.
Okay.
Now I'll say if you're like into really muddy, nasty stuff, then you have a diff locker. You're locking that rear diff up. Then now you're into a 4-wheel drive system. And how the front end one is works. It has a disco lock. As soon as this wheel goes like this and this one doesn't move as fast, they kind of lock up. It's real smooth.
Okay.
Every once in a while you'll feel it pull a little bit, but it's nothing. They work really well. But when it comes to these 4-wheel drives, I'm going to tell you from experience, I've seen it once. I don't want to see it twice because it's bad. You're sitting in the mud, spinning. You have a diff lock. Do you have a diff lock on it? No, you're pre-diff. You're like in the middle of when it came and went. And you're sitting in there, and you reach down, you hit that button, it's like, you're going to click, locks it into diff lock. I tell everybody, anytime you unlock and lock that diff, you stop, lock that rear diff. There's dealers out there, yeah, it'll eventually pop in, yeah, it does, and after about 30 times, it sends parts all over God's creation, and it gets really expensive. Now, the 4-wheel drive, if you're running down a field or going down the road, and you're going all the same speed, sure, whip it down, throw it into 4-wheel drive. But if you're sitting in the mud, like the Polaris, you could flip them in, and after everything got going the same speed they engage. These will try and engage you. Okay. But it's not as brutal as this diff unlock. Okay. Over here you have headlights, low beam, high beam, low beam, off. Here's your winch switch. And
Oh wow, is that nice?
yeah, yeah. Well, it has its pros and cons. And you know how to unlock a winch. You take the tension off of it to lock it back up. Now this gauge is very simple. This is my favorite gauge because it doesn't have all the crap in it. It's got enough to be dangerous. So what you have here, let me get everything set to the right page. Okay, so we have our time, we're gonna set it. Then we got a 1.1 mile, trip A, clears. Got trip B, push and hold, clears. Then we go back to show your 1/10 an hour and back to time. Now this button here has got a little more fun stuff. So we can go into speed stats. That is so not true because I did not go 73 mile an hour in this machine. We're gonna reset that. They probably did that when they had it on the wheels. They run these on the drums at the factory. And if it goes 70, I could see it going 73 on a set of drums. You can actually have an actual legit engine temp.
Okay.
You can have a legitimate battery voltage. And if we go to settings, we can change the units from mile per hour to kilometer. We can reset them speed stats. We're going to do that. And we can change its brightness, which here, so I can see it a little better. Then we can set this clock to 10:49. exit. So now we got everything we want. And I'm a goofball. I leave my own engine down because I don't know. I just do.
What should it run on?
These things are way more protected than what you're used to. What's really cool about newer stuff is, say this thing, the fan comes on about 205 degrees, because everything is totally different than it was years back. Years back, they ran everything nice and cool.
Yeah.
Well, now they run everything hot for emissions.
Okay.
So this thing will run up to about 204, 205 degrees. You'll hear the fan kick on, you're like, and then you'll see it to get like 216, 217. You're like, why ain't it going backwards? Then it starts to drop back down to like 190. Primarily because the rad's up there, the motor's back there, and now you're watching it on, and you're like, holy crap, why is it climb? Okay, now it's coming back down. They run hotter than they used to. It sucks, but that's what they do to us. Now, say if you're riding along, and this machine, all of a sudden, fan didn't kick on, there's a stick stuck in it, or the radiator's plugged maybe, and the fan is running, and you're just cruising along, and it gets hot, and it'll throw a little engine indicator over here, just for heat length. Let's see, and the gauge, of course, says hot. You're like, well, yeah, you're always staring at that gauge. Well, the next thing you know, if a couple minutes passes, it'll detune itself, and you'll be like, why is it not, like, why is it slowing down? I got my foot on the throttle, and I'm only, then you're like, of course, then you look down the gauge, and it'll say Lymph Mode. Now, if you see Lymph Mode, and you just look at your engine temp, and that thing's hot, you shut it off. Lymph Mode don't mean drive it back home. Right. It's in Lymph Mode because it's too hot. It'll go into Lymph Mode if it loses oil pressure. It'll go into Lymph Mode if it gets hot. It's all precautionary measures to stop you from cooking it or running it out of oil, so to speak. So they got some pretty smart things in there. And of course, if you hear a fan running and it's in Lymph Mode, that's when I got them like, okay, is there a bunch of stuff in my radiator plugging it off? Because naturally that would be what it would be. Or did I rip a coolant line off, which I haven't seen in years, and I don't have no coolant line. It'll show your park, reverse, neutral, high, and low range in here.
Okay.
Fuel gauges are very accurate. When they hit that, they'll get down to that one bar and it'll throw a little fuel light up.
Okay.
And then, of course, when that last bar goes, you have 3 quarters, 9.72 or 5.
Okay.
A lot more than you think. And then it'll also have in here an exclamation point. When you see the exclamation point, just read the gauge. The new stuff, say if you're riding around and don't realize that some people drive 2-footed, and if they're on the throttle and their foot's just barely resting, it'll be like braking. And you can't take and hold the brake down and mash the pedal like smoke the rear tires. It goes in the Lymph Mode because they don't want you burning brakes and drive belts. So, but if you're doing something really intricate, like you had a trailer on the back and you're kind of gassing, it might come up with that, but you're not going. It'll limit the throttle speed down to like 10 miles an hour.
Okay.
Which obviously, if you're doing something that intricate, what's it matter? But as soon as you let off the gas and the brake and get back, it resets itself. It's called gas brake interaction control. Anything goes on, it's got a check engine light, and it'll go into, if it's bad, like a problem, it's going to go into a Lymph Mode. It's like, okay, I have something wrong with me, shut me down, you know. But if you get a check engine light and it don't go into a Lymph Mode and your temperature's fine, don't worry about it.
Okay.
It could be just some strange little adjustment, or if you shut the key off, fire it back up.
Like it resets all.
Yep. Very simple.
And this is a
Yep.
wheel tool.
Yep.
What about an emergency brake?
Well,
They don't have them because you got park.
there's a catch-22 to that now too. One thing that you won't like, but you'll learn to like over time, is this gauge shifter. It's not a straight,
Right.
which I always hated because you're
Oh
always
my
like,
gosh.
I want to go to a low, now I'm in park. What? Yeah. Now it's kind of like it's simple. There's your reverse, there's your neutral, there's your high, there's your low.
I run it low almost all the time when I'm on the farm.
What you will find with these, if you ever start this thing up, say it might, you're like, I don't want to move, and a lot of people will just wham, and they break the cable. These run a really tight drive line in the clutching when they're new, so they might sense a little bit of drag. I'll see if I can get to do it. Let's say if one day you got in here, you're like, all you do is just go like that. It'll fall right down.
Yeah, it's good. Little shake.
The drive belts on these new ones, on these guys, see with the players, they built the machine in spec and that's the end of it. Well, after you get a couple miles on it, it's like basically out of spec. These guys start tight when it breaks in, it's in spec. It's like, okay. You will find these are really cool. And these 700s actually run, they're really smooth and powerful. I was really surprised with it. I'm like, they're doing what? I'm like, we're putting a V-twin out, putting a single big thumper in there. I'm like, that sounds kind of weird, but it's actually a pretty cool motor. Now, you're gonna say, well, what about braking? You're gonna go out and drive this machine. This machine is in braking mode. For the first 12 hours of its life, it runs fine. It runs good. It's okay. After 12 hours, it'll turn the fuel up a teeny tiny bit, advance the timing a little bit. It'll run a little stronger. It'll even start a little bit. That's their braking mode.
Okay.
It takes care of itself.
Okay.
And then you're gonna say, well, what about the first oil filter change? Oh, you're gonna love this one because they use a very complex oil system. That light will come on in about 80 to 90 hours. Okay. And that'll tell you, say maintenance soon or maintenance required. That's all that means is oil filter change time.
Okay.
I mean, greasing, of course, anytime you can. But yeah, it'll tell you when it needs its oil change.
Okay.
It's very simple. And if you change your own oil filter, you pull that manual out, and you're like, how do I reset that gauge? It'd be easier to call NASA and get a launch code for the space shuttle. YouTube is your friend. If you YouTube, Defender HD7 oil meter reset, and the guy's like, yep, done. You read the book and you're like, yeah, I can't never get it to
I
work.
do YouTube for everything.
Then
These
when I-
guys taught me that.
Then when I come to oil meter, because in here I do it with the computer.
Yeah.
I plug into a computer
Yeah.
and check. Everybody's like, well, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, I got it to work once. I said, but if you go to the video, and I'm like, we pull it up, and I'm like, see, just follow this guy's video. He's really good explaining. The book's like, you got to do this, that, and the guy in the video is like, yeah, you just push and hold this book, done. I'm like that guy. And if your seatbelt is not fastened on the driver's side, you only get to go 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, they all do that now.
Yeah, all mechanic players.
You mentioned the battery.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you said that because that's in a hidden spot, part of the wall. He's gonna have to bail out for a minute.
Christian, jump out there.
Yoink.
Over on this side, I guess there's the almighty hidden compartment. It'll air dry on the way home, I'm sure of that. Quarter turn, pull it out. Another quarter turn here, pull it out.
They're just pins.
Yep. Down under here.
What the?
There's a free gum band. There's your battery. And this is the very important fuse panel. Yeah, it's got its own little separate compartment.
Man, that's neat.
And right here, of course, it'll have another one. Key switch, cooling fan, fan relay. So if you never had a fan, like if your fan ain't running,
Yeah, check here.
that's where that's gonna be at. Because everybody goes up there. There's only one. I'm like, no, there's two. And they are keyed. How they go on here. But yeah, that's your battery. 12 volt system right there. It's really the only thing that's in there. Sure, you don't have to worry about it.
Is there anything that you've seen with these that I should know about? Any?
No, they've been
You've been telling me for the last couple of years that these are
they've
the way
been
to go.
very good machines.
Okay.
I will say I don't know much about the new 7 motor because it's kind of new, but it's not. It's new in this, but whatever. No, these have been relatively simple and hassle-free. Well, the nice thing about these ones